For neutrals, this was probably a good one. Two teams in the middle of the pack in the Liga meant anything could happen in that game. And anything kind of did happen in that game. 2-1 would have felt like a huge result. Winning at Pamplona, getting a difficult 3 points against a tough team around you in the league table. But unfortunately, the end of that match is going to decide how this game is spoken about. I know I usually do the 5 headlines, but as I was preparing them, I felt like I had 20 different small things to say about each and every individual player that all worked in tandem with one another. So it was challenging narrowing this down to just 5. That said, I was able to get it into these nice 5 categories, but if you do want a more nuanced conversation, head over to the podcast, which will be out tomorrow, and we'll be able to jump from topic to topic there. In the meantime, here's the 5 headlines from Barcelona's 2-2 draw with Osasuna. 1 is Injury FC. I know it's all about the players that are on the field, and Barca have a talented roster enough to get some kind of result, but you look at that starting lineup with Luuk de Jong and Samuel Umtiti making his return to the starting 11 after 227 days. It's that moment that I'm reminded that Ansu Fati and Pedri, not only are they out, but they have played a total of 9 matches together, and they have only started 3 matches at FC Barcelona together. That is Ansu Fati and Pedri, 2 of the best players, not only teenagers, but 2 of the most influential and important players to the Spanish national team. And for them to be missing, alongside Memphis and Aguero and Martin Braithwaite, it is hard to say because it feels like spilled milk and excuses. But to expect Luuk de Jong to be that important striker that Barcelona needs at the moment to be that goal scorer, it's almost just not fair to him to expect that of him. And I'm not trying to defend Luuk de Jong or Umtiti. Certainly they need to be better. Certainly they need to be up to the level. And maybe they're not at that level. Maybe no matter how much playing time they haven't had or if they do get, could make them better. But at least those players have an excuse for not being able to raise their level of intensity coming right off that bench all season long than some of their other teammates. 2 is Barca's back line is suspect. Unfortunately, it's a bit true, especially on that first goal after Barcelona had taken momentum of the match. Osasuna snapped it right back, David Garcia finding the back of the net. That first goal scored on a dead ball set piece again. Ter Stegen could have been better, and Umtiti leaving his man clearly not ready to come off that bench and defend just yet. Something did have to give. Osasuna scored only 1 goal in their last 6 La Liga matches, and it was from the penalty spot. Barcelona had kept a clean sheet in only 1 of their last 9 La Liga matches. Unfortunately, it's that second one that gave on Barcelona's behalf. Probably the only compliment I have for that backline in this match was Piqué. He led the team in ball recoveries today, just beating out Busquets. And he was really important in that second half to make sure that Osasuna didn't get that second goal earlier and push for a third, to be honest with you. And unfortunately, I have my first negative thing of the season to say about Ronald Araujo. His inability to play a through ball was what Osasuna actually game planned for. And so in Osasuna, whether it was in a medium block or bringing that high pressure, Barcelona wasn't able to get out of danger on that right side, where Dembélé would have to drop pretty deep to receive the ball, and we'll get to him later, but Araujo was not finding Dembélé where he needed to, and he just doesn't have the confidence on the ball that that position requires. So much of what Barcelona was doing was coming down that left side, even without Jordi Alba, whether it was Abde and Umtiti, who's a better passer than Araujo. So for Araujo, the negative thing is that he is still learning, he's still growing. We have seen some games where he's been better on the ball, but when he does face a team that's prepared for the fact that he can't necessarily break lines, you see some of the worst of him offensively. Defensively, we're always going to get that low ceiling. But we're at a point where Araujo is my first defender on the team sheet, so I am starting to begin to expect a little bit more from him, and I'm excited to see how good he's going to be when he can start to play those balls. In the meantime, there might be some shaky days like today. 3 is that the Abde train is leaving the station, or maybe it's already left, and I say that a little bit in jest, but if you didn't already get on the Abde train, maybe this man of the match performance is enough to get you there. You can criticize a soon-to-be 20-year-old, his birthday's on Thursday, for not converting more chances and for desperately relying on his right foot too much. He could have had a hat trick if he was able to let the ball run across his body and take a shot with his left. That said, you could see all the raw tools. I'm excited to see what Xavi can do with him, with a player that, to be honest with you, for a guy in me that watches way too much football, especially grainy footage on YouTube, I had only seen a little bit of him in highlights from a match last May against Lleida where he scored a goal. One of his only 2 goals prior to joining Barça B, where he had 1 goal prior to this goal, his first for FC Barcelona's first team. So think about that. He had 2 goals last season in the 3rd division for Hercules, 1 with Barça B, and now an important goal, which should have been, again, a 2-1 victory, a 2-1 winner for FC Barcelona. A huge step up in a short amount of time for Abde. There are players where I have a good idea from years of La Masia, how good they're going to be and what potential they have, But with a player with such little known about him like Abde, I'm so pleasantly surprised that Barcelona were able to find another one with their scouting department, especially considering that Abde is a Moroccan international and didn't even play in the last U20 competition with the Moroccan national team. He's not with the Spanish national team, so it's a little more difficult to see youth players in that way for Barcelona. So to go out and find him in the Valencian community is a great piece of scouting. As far as his role in the first team, while I think Balde will do what Conrad de la Fuente did last year, where he is out of form and inconsistent jumping from the first team bench and not playing to Barça B occasionally and trying to be an important player there, I think Balde will go back with Barça B for the spring when Dani Alves returns. For Abde, I think he's going to stay with the first team. I don't see how he's going to go back. And what was so telling about Abde's performance was how sloppy Dembele's was. I know he got the assist on the Abde goal, but that was easily his best move of the game. Maybe his only positive move. He never had it, that being Dembele in this game. There are matches where I say that he makes mistakes because he's capable of greatness every time he touches the ball, but this wasn't one of those matches. He was making mistakes today just because he wasn't up to snuff. I think this was his worst game of the season, and I hope that maybe Barcelona could even use this kind of match in some of those renewal negotiations. He's still an important player, and he's still capable of greatness, but these matches are those to be forgotten. 4 is that Gavi is who Frankie should be. Frankie de Jong played at the number 10 today to support Luuk de Jong, to come in behind and to also create space for runs in the box, but didn't really turn out that way. I won't read you his stats for Frankie de Jong, but there weren't many. He was too high to comfortably affect that match. I get the runs in behind, and Frankie's threat to do that is part of why Nico got in behind for his goal. And I think that's the one bright spot. Frankie and Nico are working okay together, and hopefully that chemistry continues to improve. But that's the only compliment I have for Frankie today. Obviously his positioning came from instructions from the sideline, but I can't help but thinking his instincts aren't great that high up the field either. Meanwhile, Gavi's stats weren't great, but the eye test tells me that if not for Abde, Gavi was the man of the match in this game. He covered for Abde and Umtiti when Barca were defending, constantly putting himself in tackles even if he didn't win them. Yeah, he got his yellow card, but that's the kind of game you get a yellow card in. Osasuna had 5 of their own, and you'd think that the most physical player for Barca today would get one too. Defensively is where people love his personality, but today was a day I was impressed with what he was doing offensively. Defensively, as I said, with Abde and Umtiti supporting them laterally and going sideline to sideline, filling out that Barca defense horizontally. Offensively, though, he was important to what Barcelona were doing vertically, playing almost as a pivot alongside Busquets. It felt like a little bit of a different role, and we saw Gavi much deeper. But he's been so versatile too, being stuck on the left wing where you thought, oh, is it going to be Pedri or Gavi fighting for minutes at that left wing and left interior? But now it becomes Frankie and Gavi. Maybe that's where the difficult choice is in the starting 11. It's a good problem for Barcelona to have all these talented midfielders, and clearly Xavi is still tinkering. And today, Gavi was the one who was the beneficiary of all that experimenting. And 5 is haunted by those late game ghosts. Koeman is gone, and Koeman was questionable in some of his late game decision making, but you could have said that in 2003 or 2021. But Xavi seems to now be snake bitten by the same ghost that Barcelona cannot finish out a match. Xavi with Al Sadd didn't have that many close games, so this is a new test for the young manager. And I want to be clear, this result and the personnel that Xavi has at his disposal says nothing about Xavi even next weekend against Elche, or what he's going to be as a manager 6 months from now. But today, and again, I'm not Xavi, he knows much more than me. If I was manager of Barcelona, I would have done things a little bit differently in the last 20 minutes, or at least I would have tried to. I probably wouldn't have kept on Luuk. I would have shifted Dembele to the middle and brought on Demir or Ferran Jutgla. Like, if Xavi's going to trust him, bring him on 10 minutes earlier. And while Mingueza replaced Nico to help with the build-up, which it did, the combination of Umtiti and Mingueza on the left side unbalanced in under-pressure defense. Mingueza is struggling to fit into this Barca team, and so continuing to give him minutes. I mean, Dest is also struggling to fit into Barca right now. But again, Mingueza coming on for Nico, it did unbalance what that defense was trying to do, and especially playing Mingueza on the left. For people who usually are checking into this YouTube channel, you know I probably wouldn't have picked Coutinho either, especially when there are those intangibles like mentality, intensity. When we're talking about those things, a player that keeps coming up in transfer rumors, especially in January. Maybe Coutinho is the first one out the door in January. That's not the player. When you need a player fighting for that crest, like Xavi said at halftime in Bayern Munich, I don't think Coutinho is going to be the pick. And also just tactically, with Luuk de Jong back defending using his big frame and Coutinho being that outlet up top, that only release valve for all that pressure, he doesn't hold the ball up. So it's just puzzling that Coutinho is being asked to do something that is antithetical to his skill set. I just don't think he was the player for that moment. Not how I would have done it, but again, I do trust that Xavi is experimenting and tinkering and trying to figure out what the formula is going to be to make that surge to top 4. Right now, as you saw, 2-2 with Osasuna, even on the road, it's unfortunate because it should have been 3 points. That's what it should have been on the road against Osasuna. But instead, Barça have to settle and settle and settle and settle, and you just hope that Barça don't have to settle in enough matches where they don't finish in the top 4. There's work to be done, there's a break to be had, there's some experiments to be done in Saudi Arabia coming on Tuesday, and hopefully that's all figured out and Elche gets the worst of Barcelona figuring it all out and getting all they need to, all that fury, all that fire from Bayern Munich and hopefully from this match against Osasuna, and that comes to play against Elche. But in the meantime, we have the podcast coming out tomorrow. And as always, until next time, Forza Barça.